All right. So now I get to make everybody mad
Yes.
because we're going to talk about bloat.
Yeah, I think we need to start there. We need to define that. I actually went and looked it up. Okay.
Okay.
When it's a verb used with an object, it's to expand or distend, as with air, water, etc., cause to swell.
Okay. And I think when we're talking about Linux, we're focusing on the cause to swell part
Mhm.
of the I guess that part of the definition, right?
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Let me define what I think people mean when they say
Right.
bloat as it pertains to Linux. The cause to swell part generally gets it. But
Yeah.
I think what people mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is where I'm going to be focusing on, is that there are a lot of bits and bobs that you don't necessarily need to have a working Linux system. And anything beyond that is bloat. And okay, I guess.
I'm going to take it and twist it a little bit on you, Leo, and I'm going to say
Okay.
so. Like it talks about distend as with air, right? So I'm going to use the word inflate, and I'm going to
Okay.
say artificially inflated for no purpose.
Okay.
That's where I'm thinking people are coming from.
I thought you were going to say that I was full of hot air and
Nope. No, I didn't even go
okay.
there, right? I mean, so
Not
no.
yet.
I think that's where people come from sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
And the word artificial is not in there, but like I added that. Okay.
Right. So okay, so I do think that's how most people see it, right?
Yeah.
Like anything beyond the exact stuff that you need to get the exact job that you need done is anything beyond that is bloat. And I mean, sure, I can see that, but I don't see why that's necessarily a good thing. Other than these slight disk savings, the storage disk savings that you get when you strip everything back and have nothing extra. But obviously, I'm not a subscriber to that outlook. I honestly don't care.
I think we have a pretty pragmatic look on things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got huge disks everywhere. I don't care. And even if, and I'm going to make the case that even if you're on a 64 gigabyte SSD, that you shouldn't have to worry about it either. So, here's what we did. So, if you've not been a follower of the show, let me give you a quick recap of what we've been doing over the past few weeks, and that is playing with Flatpak and Snap and actually getting the hard numbers of how big these apps are. And it turns out it's a little harder than you might think.
Yeah.
It's blurry when it comes to Flatpak
It
and
can
Snap.
be. Yeah.
But we've been gathering up, and I have numbers for you for how big all these applications are. We started with a set of 9 applications that I use on a very regular basis. And that is, these are alphabetical, not in preference. Brave, Discord, Element, Firefox, GIMP, Inkscape, Kdenlive, OBS, and Telegram. Every app that we use to produce this show is on that list, right?
Yes.
So I use it
Yep.
at least every 2 weeks. We communicate over Discord. We talk to our friends and listeners on Element. We talk to them on Telegram. I mean, I do all the research for the show, all of the notes, all of the everything on Firefox. I think, Dan, you use Vivaldi more than...
I do, but I mean, it's the same kind of thing. So, I mean...
Right. So I can't imagine Vivaldi would be much bigger than Brave or anything like that. But I had to pick a browser.
Right.
And OBS to record backups, to do live streams, to do all that stuff. So this is a very common set of apps for me, and I don't really deviate that much from these. I add a couple more, remove a couple more, whatever. It really kind of depends. But these show up on pretty much every one of my every one of my machines.
Right.
And so those are the apps that I wanted to test on.
Those are the core apps that you definitely depend on, no matter where you are.
Right. And last minute, I took it even further. I wasn't planning on checking this out on any other operating system. right? I've got Fedora 42, right? And then Ubuntu 2504, right?
Correct.
Fedora for the Flatpaks, Ubuntu for the snaps. And that was going to give us a really good idea. But I thought, as I was sitting in front of a Windows machine, well, I've got all these apps on a Windows machine too. Well, why shouldn't I check that? And so I did. I have, luckily for Windows and Mac OS, it's a lot easier to get a lock on what an individual application is, like how big it is.
Right.
So I have even more in-depth numbers there. But right before the show, right before we actually sat down to record, or as we're sitting down to record, I'm like, I do have a Mac. I could, it's an ARM-based Mac, and I could test all of this stuff there too. So I did. So this is what we've got. We've got all 9 of those apps installed on all 4 of those operating systems: Mac OS, Windows, Fedora 42, and Ubuntu 2504. All the same apps. I wanted to look at how much disk space all these apps were taking up. And so I did.
Right.
Now, this is where the bloat thing comes in.
It's a little blurry.
Well, it is a little blurry, but the one thing that I couldn't do is, at least not without a gargantuan effort and emailing so many people, how big were these applications actually going to be? And we're talking libraries included. That's why it's hard. Mm-hmm. How big were all these applications going to be if you were to install them from a repository?
Yeah.
If you were to, say, install Arch and then install these applications, how big is all that?
It's a little tricky because, like, a single package can bring down other packages, right? That are libraries, potentially, other things that go along with it. Whereas, obviously, the universal applications in Windows and Mac, they have everything together, right?
That's why they were easier, yeah.
That's why they're easier, yep.
So before I get into the hard numbers, I want to put out a request. If there's an easy way to figure this out, you need to let me know, because the only true way for me to say that I am correct on bloat and Flatpak and Snap don't constitute enough to really kind of to make it to the where I think would be like bloat.
Excessive.
I would need to actually know what the comparable numbers are. If you were to install all 9 of these applications, right, on the most barest of bare systems, how big would it actually be? And I mean, we would have to start with a super bare.
You could do it one at a time.
Yeah, I mean,
potentially.
So we didn't do that. We kept it to exactly what we were talking about, and then added the other 2 operating systems to it. So over the break, that may be what I spend a little bit of time doing, and then I can be a little more definitive on this. But here are the numbers. Here are the things that we figured out. So macOS 1, it turns out. But I think macOS has...
It's a different architecture, so you can't forget that.
Right. macOS runs on ARM64. All the other machines, Windows, Fedora, and Ubuntu, are all running on x86 or AMD 64, whatever, however you want to classify it. Those types of machines. So I think without all the extra x86 overhead, I think that's a big reason why the application's on macOS 1.
Right.
But anyway, macOS clocked in all 9 of those applications, and some of them are quite large, at 5 gigs. It was like 5.0 something 4 or something.
1, 2
like
or something. I don't know. Yeah, it was insignificant.
Right. Except to the bloat people, 40 megabytes might actually be a whole lot of space. Yeah, wow. Anyway, so just so you know, I only rounded to the nearest 100 megabytes, okay?
Close enough.
Windows clocked in at 800 megabytes more, at 5.8 gigabytes for all 9 of those applications. Flatpak, 800 megabytes more at 6.6 gigabytes. And Snap clocked in at 7 gigabytes. Now, to Snap's credit. The Snap actually, I think, beats out Flatpak. And it turns out...
It's super close. Super close.
Right. What you have to remember is that Snap always remembers the last one as well. Right. So you have an application, if it updates, it remembers the last one. So it keeps it, holds it, just in case something goes wrong. And because of that, it kind of inflates the directory
Slightly.
that contains all the snaps, right? So if you were to take out all the extras, it looked like you would save somewhere around the vicinity of a gig. So snap is probably closer to 6 gigs total.
Right, because remember, it's not like doubling the size of the application. It's sort of just saving the difference or the delta between the last version and the current version. And
that's what
it's
it
not
seemed
saving
like.
the whole thing, right? So
yeah, it seemed like there were a couple applications that were like, "There's no way that thing is 64 megabytes. Like, why is that so small?"
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I came up with.
Right.
But then you have to remember that snaps are compressed on disk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to take a lot of digging to actually figure out what the heck, how much compression you're going to get out of each individual application, and not every application has the same compression ratio. So
yeah, different algorithms even, and like you can only, I mean, even with the best of algorithms, sometimes the best of compression, you still don't compress it that much.
Yeah,
depending on what it is, right?
Right. So yeah, and I think it's LZO which favors speed over compression. So it's not like we're talking huge numbers or anything like that. But that would, if you want to compare apples to apples, right? Because macOS, Windows, Flatpak don't compress these on disk. You would have to decompress the snaps, and that would probably kind of negate some of the benefit of keeping that second version and getting a weird number for that. So I kept Snap at 7, right? Just kind of, it's a wash, right?
It's a good round. It's a good round number, and it's really not that far off.
Exactly. So so that's it. So from macOS at 5 gigs to Snap's wonky little number at 7 gigs, we're talking a 2 gig delta between
all of it.
The slimmest set of applications to the biggest set of applications. And again, I think the Bloat folks are comparing to debs and stuff, right? Just a deb from the repo.
I guess just straight up, like OBS or, even like Telegram, they're going to be a lot smaller. But again, you got to go add all of the other bits and bobs that it brings in with it in order to get an accurate comparison.
Right, but are they that much smaller? I mean,
it's
not like the stuff in the
libraries attached with it.
Right, but it's not like the stuff in the runtimes in Flatpak aren't actually on your system. Right. You just only have one version of them. And so you're locked into using very specific versions of software. Otherwise, you change that runtime on a regular distro, a flat type distro without these containerized applications, and you've broken half your apps, right? So there's a lot of restriction when you're coming from a traditional deb installed or or the RPM type installed systems, right? So there's a big trade-off there. And I'm okay with sacrificing a gig of disk space to have the freedom to install the latest, greatest version of every single application without having to worry about, did the arch devs make sure that this particular thing is working with this particular thing, or, going out of tree, or having to mess around with DistroBox or whatever it is, just to have a more traditional type system. I just like having my app and having it
like most people. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I'm coming from. These are the numbers that I'm looking at to base my outlook on. And the bottom line is, this ain't bloat, and it doesn't matter. Because think about that 64 gigabyte SSD that I started this conversation out with, right? You're dedicating 7 gigs at the most for applications.
Right.
The operating system, that's
pretty small.
One of the chonky ones. Let's even say,
we'll say Ubuntu.
Slackware.
Okay. Oh, wow. Oh. Well, with Ubuntu, I got a number there. It's like 9 gig.
Okay. All right. So call it 10. I was going to say Slackware at 15.
Get all installed. You're there, right?
So
9 gig
10
or so.
Plus these 9 applications. Heck, throw a few more in there too. Round it out to another 10 gigs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it.
Like a third of your disk yet.
Right. So So I don't see. Yeah, what would that be, like 21, 22? So let's just call it an even third of your disk, right? I don't see it. I really don't. Like, yes, for people that run one application, sure.
Well, sure.
But I don't think anybody just runs one app on a machine that you use on the day-to-day.
Yeah, we're not talking about a kiosk.
Right. I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there just running one application.
Right. I agree with that.
So you're going to end up with a library here, a library there, regardless of how you install your applications, regardless of the operating system on which you install your application. You're just in this vortex of it don't matter.
I totally agree. I mean, we're way past the small drives that we're talking about at 64 gig. We're so far beyond that. Now we're, most people 256 at least, probably more like 512 is probably a more realistic number of what you're putting into your systems.
You're scraping the bottom of the barrel when you're buying 256 gig drives.
Yeah, you really gotta hunt for that. And
right, but I am not discounting the fact that I know that there are people with 64 gig hard drives out there, 128 gig hard drives out there.
Don't, yeah,
right. No, of course. But they're in much less circulation now than they ever were. Unless you're really intent on buying like the off lease hardware or whatever from eBay,
I guess
there's a good chance you're getting a much bigger disk than 64 gigs.
Yeah, because I can tell you that the cost difference between those things is, really small. And, for the extra $10 or whatever, you might as well get something a little more sizable.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 256 to 512. I mean, yeah, really, it's anywhere between $5 and $10 more, and you double your space.
That's tiny. For a couple of cups of coffee here.
Yeah, it is. So I'm just not seeing it. I mean,
I don't either.
Yes, if you want to play that game, that the runtimes that Flatpak comes with,
I guess
has stuff in it that you'll never use. Okay, sure.
Oh well.
But why should I care about that? Why is that such a big sticking point for? Because this is anytime we say anything about Bloat on YouTube, anytime we talk about it in the wider community, anytime we talk about it in Discord or Telegram, there's always someone, always someone talking about Bloat. And I don't know why I should care about 800 megabytes. I really don't.
I don't either. Yeah, I mean, what is too big, I guess, is my question.
I mean,
I don't
half
know.
my disk, I guess.
Yeah, that would be too big. Yeah, no joke. I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, like a 512 gig SSD, right? Like 500 gig SSD, right? Like half of that. Okay, maybe we're treading into
too much.
250 gigs of application or whatever. But at that point, you're past that point in Flatpak where you've already downloaded all the runtimes. Like they're already all there.
Yeah, like what? How many applications do you have installed at that point?
Right.
Yeah.
The only increase in application size is going to be the application itself because the runtime is already there. You've already downloaded it. It's already on your disk. It's already taken up the space. So you're past that, and I think I'm past that with the applications that I've got running. I mean, I've got all kinds of GTK this and GTK that and Qt whatever, and
honestly, that's a feature I feel like in a way because I don't have to bring in if I'm on a Qt Qt desktop, I don't have to bring in a whole bunch of runtimes, for the whole system, necessarily for GTK stuff. And the same goes true if you're on a GTK system and you're bringing in a Qt app, right?
Right.
I mean, the reverse is also true. I don't have to worry about it. Like it's taken care of when I install the app.
Yep, definitely. So I just can't come up with a good argument. I like to argue in my head, I like to try and see everything from everybody's point of view. And the only thing that I could really come up with that would really push ahead any kind of Bloat argument is quite literally you're counting the megabytes.
Yeah,
you're counting.
Why are you counting so close? I mean,
yeah, right. And I mean, am I right on that? I think, like, so this is a question for the wider audience. If you're still listening, right? If you are a bloat person and you're still listening by some crazy happenstance, am I right about that? Is it really down? Are you ricing your disk? Right? We've got people that spend so much time ricing their desktop and getting it to look cool and be cool and flutter here and swivel there. And I've got this thing on my desktop and it's counting here. And I've got all kinds of information and distraction on my desktop. They wouldn't call it a distraction, but like there's so much stuff and I spent so much time in it. Is it akin to that? Is that what it is? Like, if you can get a 650 megabyte installation of Linux down to 630 megabytes, like you've won the bloat game. And then 3 weeks later, you figure out why you couldn't do that in the first place because something doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, right. I've been down that road.
I think it does. Yeah, I think it totally does boil down to fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Right. And the other thing is they've gone on the internet and there's been some other shouty guy there saying things probably with less facts than what we're presenting. And they just blindly believed it, right? Because, that's how that works.
Right.
Generally speaking. So, and then the thing just perpetuates because, so-and-so said this and then, everybody else is saying the same thing and it feeds on itself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that out there, without actually checking on any of it, if you will,
right.
to verify. Yeah.
Yeah. And far be it from me to tell you to stop counting the megabytes. That's not what I'm saying here at all.
Right.
But it's this perpetuation of this idea that Flatpak is bloated, therefore Flatpak is bad.
Right.
Right. The idea of Flatpak. Well, we have this library duplicated on your system, therefore bad. Right. That.
No, it has the right version of the library to work with the thing, so it's going to work.
and that's really the only issue I have with the bloat argument. But because it's so pervasive, because I see it everywhere, because every time we talk about bloat, there's always at least one talking about this. That was the whole impetus for all of this. I just had to know because it was my instinct that how bloated could it possibly be? It's not that big. Like it's not taking up my whole disk. I always have hundreds of gigs left.
Yeah, exactly.
To download pictures of Dan's face. And then edit them, put a little chicken beak on the front. I do all kinds of fun stuff like that.
He does do that.
That is right. So I had to find out, and I am not impressed by what I found. You know what I mean? Like as far as the perpetuation of the idea that bloat.
Yeah, no. So
exists.
We debunked it right here, right now. Bloat. It doesn't float. Sorry. Move on.
Bloat doesn't float. I like that. And it's just so insignificant of a size that I just don't know why I need to care about 2 gigs compared to every other operating system in existence.
I don't think you do.
And then what? I save another gig if I forego Flatpaks and snaps and the convenience that they bring just to have a wonky distro box set up so that I can get applications that I could normally have gotten elsewhere, and then I end up reduplicating all of the stuff because now I have an actual, real, full, true-blooded container on my system. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So really, again, this is not really to bash on bloat folks because, again,
no, it's just
do what you want to with your own disk. I don't care.
Exactly.
Do your thing. Just stop perpetuating the myth.
Yeah, don't say that. That's not the truth.
Yeah, because it's not. It really isn't. And I don't know why I got so. How did it get legs like this?
I don't know because I think we just want to. You want to independently verify all of the claims for reasoning not to use said thing, and this was one of them that rose to the top for a lot of people of reasoning why and now it's been debunked, if you will. So
yeah.
We just need to move on to the next thing, whatever that is.
That's it. That's what I'm scared of.
There are other things, and then some of them are more legit than others. I'm not going to dispute that.
Right. But I'm afraid that
in the end of the day, why do we care so much? That's what I really want to know. What is keeping us from using the thing that works? Why don't we do that?
Maybe that's actually probably you've put it better than I could have, I guess. You kind of cut
surprising.
to the root of the problem. Why does it bother you what other people use?
Right?
Like why?
And if it works for them, why do you care?
Exactly. It is. Takes a lot of effort to watch a video, hear what somebody has to say, and then go down at the bottom and be like, "Nah, that sucks." I don't get it.
I know.
I don't get it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something huge. Maybe someone can shed some light on it for me. And if it's just ricing your disk, that's cool, man.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah. Ricing your disk. Keep stripping it away until there's
go
literally
install Windows
nothing.
95 and defragment. Your heart's content is the way I feel about that. If you want to rice your disk,
I actually want. It doesn't have to do anything. I just want an application for Linux that shows me the little blinky squares, like the old defragger used to.
I think I saw this recently.
Oh my god!
There's a web page someplace that makes you. It like pretends to be defragmenting a disk, and it's just a web page.
Yeah, so I'd be lying if back in the day in Windows 95 and Windows 98 that I did not do that at least weekly.
Yeah,
but that's because my hard drive was like 20 gigs.
Yeah, and it did. So here's another myth that we can debunk. Having less stuff on your disk doesn't make it faster.
That is very true.
And so maybe that's a thing that's been perpetuated as well.
2 gig systems notwithstanding, right? If you've got a 2 gig system, then I get there's nuance there that we could go on forever about. But let's say 4 gigs or more. I think you're right. I think you're unequivocally right.
I think most things, yeah, and yeah, if you're not, cataloging what's on the disk all the time, yeah, like once it's installed, and it's just going to be the speed that it is, and that's what you get. So, I stripping everything off or ricing your disk, if you will, that's really not going to speed things up for you. That's a total myth. It's going to save you space.
There you go.
But it is not going to speed anything up. That does not work that way.
I kind of feel like disks are like RAM, like unused disk space is wasted disk space.
So fill them up.
Fill it up with an app, man.
Yeah,
do something with that free space.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't mean for any of that to come off as any kind of bash fest or anything like that. I just don't understand.
Right.
So
right. And we don't want to keep the thing perpetuating forward with the myth, if you will.
Yeah, because it ain't there. I don't see it. I really don't. 2 gigs ain't gonna crush anybody.
Anyway, you can catch all the great topics as they unfold on our Lemmy, or our subreddit, or our news channel on Discord. And we've got links in the show notes here, so you can get to all those things. Lemmy, Reddit, Discord. And including all of the social spaces that we have, like Mastodon, Telegram, Matrix, Twitch, Twitter, Blue Sky.
Yeah, and those are the things that you're going to want to pay attention to over the next couple of months, because this is the last full episode, but there'll be one more piece of the full episode coming out. For those of you just watching the singles, right, just the 20-minute segments, there'll be one more coming out for y'all. But if you're watching this in the whole episode with all 3 main segments in here, this is it for a while. Me and Dan, we're gonna go sit on a beach, sip a Mai Tai.
Maybe not a beach, but
complain about the guacamole. We're gonna take a break.
We're definitely gonna do that. Yeah.
Get caught up on all the other stuff. That
exactly. Yeah.
So when we come around, now that's not saying that we're not going to be around and we're not going to say hey and whatever. I still want to do a live stream here and there. I think as me and Dan have time and as the stars align for us, we're going to sit down and do what we can. But we're still going to be around on Lemmy and Reddit. I told you earlier, I have internet everywhere, so it's not like, I mean, I will unplug. I will push airplane mode, but for the most part, there's really not many days go by that I don't check in on stuff. And if there's a good conversation happening, I'm going to join even though I wasn't invited.
Yeah, you toss it out there and we'll jump on it, I'm sure.
That's right. So join one of those spaces. Be part of the community. That way you can send us feedback, give us stuff to talk about, and then we can just back and forth until the next episode